2. Montana and Wyoming. The Flathead Lake Monster. You have a better chance of winning the Powerball lottery than experiencing a rare opportunity of sighting the Flathead Lake Monster. Laney Hansel. According to numerous eyewitness reports, Flathead Lake, located in northwestern Montana, is home to an enormous eel-like creature. The strange animal is said to closely resemble descriptions of the renowned Loch Ness Monster. Known as the Flathead Lake Monster, and alternately as Flessie, Montana Nessie, and Flatty, the creature moves with vertical undulations and is seen at times frolicking in the lake. This unusual animal supposedly measures about 8 to 20 feet in length, although some eyewitnesses have reported it could possibly reach up to 40 feet. Observers often describe the monster as having several vertical humps visible above the water. It has smooth skin that is gray to black in color and large, dark eyes. When the Flathead Lake Monster swims, it is known for leaving a wake in the water up to 12 inches tall, similar to that of a motorboat. It would be difficult to find a lake surrounded by scenery that is more gorgeous and breathtaking than Flathead Lake. Moreover, the lake is enormous in size and splendid in beauty. The lake is world-renowned for its crystal-clear waters. The cleanliness of the lake and its pure waters are nothing short of remarkable. Flathead Lake owes its untainted waters to several factors. Low human populations around the lake. Its watershed predominantly lies within managed lands such as national park and designated wilderness areas. High precipitation in the form of snowmelt from the mountains and a rapid flushing time. Flushing time is the amount of time that it would take for all of the water in the lake to be replaced. Flathead Lake could replace its water in less than 3 years. Conversely, Lake Tahoe, the famed alpine lake of Sierra Nevada, has a flushing time of about 650 years. The rapid flushing time helps Flathead Lake to rid itself of pollutants and contaminants. Flathead Lake is a large, deep lake, quite the suitable habitat for an aquatic cryptid. The lake has a surface area of over 190 square miles and a maximum depth of just over 370 feet. With an average water depth of over 160 feet, the lake is rather deep, which would help a large creature, such as the Flathead Lake Monster, to avoid detection. Flathead Lake is home to several species of trout, as well as other fish, which could serve as a viable food source for a monster. The first verified sighting of the Flathead Lake Monster dates back to 1889, when Captain James C. Kerr, skipper of the passenger steamboat, the U.S. Grant, saw the creature. Kerr noticed a 20-foot-long creature directly in the path of his boat. The chance meeting between the U.S. Grant and the Flathead Lake Monster was also a mass sighting, as many of the passengers aboard the steamer saw the beast as well. The creature was described as a whale-like monster, and it frightened one of the passengers so badly that he opened fire on the animal with his rifle. Fortunately for the creature, it was not hit by the gunfire and was able to dive into the water, escaping unharmed. Laney Hansel, a retired biologist who spent 30 years working on Flathead Lake, collects and records sightings of the Flathead Lake Monster. To date, There are around 100 documented sightings. Although Hansel has never seen the creature himself, he takes sightings of the animal and the people who report them very seriously. In an interview, Hansel said, "With the evidence that I've seen, I would say they have been telling me the truth." Among the most intriguing reports that Hansel has collected is that of the Flathead Lake Monster being observed on 2 separate occasions by the same witnesses. Seeing the Flathead Lake Monster even one time is remarkable. After all, Hansel has spent over 30 years on the lake without a sighting. Getting a glimpse of the monster twice would almost be the equivalent of being struck by lightning twice. However, this is exactly what happened to George Coate and his son Neil. On May 25, 1985, the pair saw a dark creature which they described as being twice as thick as a telephone pole. They claim that the animal was also about the length of a telephone pole. The creature had a snake-like head and a tail reminiscent of an eel. The animal was seen diving and surfacing in the lake. Incredibly, on July 1, 1987, George and Neil Coate observed a creature matching the description of their earlier encounter. Sightings of the Flathead Lake Monster hit their crescendo in 1993. Laney Hansel received 7 reports. Paul Fugelberg, former editor of the Flathead Courier, who has also cataloged sightings, particularly early reports, received several witness statements as well. Hansel could not point to anything, such as the weather or other factors, that would lead to such a rise in activity in the monster. Perhaps the increase in the number of sightings could have been attributed to more interest in the monster and an overall greater awareness by the public. Perhaps. 13 sightings of a cryptid in 1 year is a lot by any measure. However, when the average sightings per year is 2 or less, this sudden increase simply defies explanation. One of the more recent sightings occurred in 2005. Jim and Julia Manley were stranded on the lake after their boat had broken down. The couple were relaxing on the deck as they waited for help to arrive. Suddenly, they began to hear splashing in the water. What the Manleys saw next would confirm that they were having an encounter with the Flathead Lake Monster. A creature with several humps was moving against the current. I visited Flathead Lake in July 2021. While driving north on Montana Highway 35, just north of Bear Dance, something about 30 feet long caught my eye in the lake. I slowed down and watched the water. I saw something dark in color that appeared to have a couple of humps suddenly dart beneath the surface. My wife asked, "Did you see that?" I told her I did and asked her to keep watching. The road is narrow where we were driving, and all the property is privately owned, and there aren't any pull-offs. Neither of us saw whatever it was come back up out of the water, and to this day, we wonder what we saw. Did we see the Flathead Monster? I'm not ready to say that we did. Perhaps it was a wake from boaters on the lake, although there were no boats nearby at the time. But whatever we saw was odd. I'll leave it at that. Smetty. Lake DeSmet in Jackson County, Wyoming, is home to a lake monster known as Smetty. Tales of the monster predate the arrival of white settlers to the region. Long before the influx of pioneers from the east, the indigenous people of the area were leery of camping on the shores of the Lake de Smet. Lake de Smet is a picturesque body of water located near the base of the Bighorn Mountains in northern Wyoming. Decades ago, the lake was enlarged with a reservoir. Before the addition, Lake de Smet was the largest natural lake in northern Wyoming. Today, the lake has a capacity of over 200,000 acre-feet and a maximum depth of 120 feet, more than enough room for a monster to dwell undisturbed and roam freely. Lake de Smet is named after a Jesuit missionary and probably the first white man to see the lake, Father Pierre Jean de Smet. De Smet was traveling with fur trappers through the area when they came upon the lake. Lake de Smet is at the center of fascinating Aboriginal folklore. One such legend is a heart-wrenching crow love story reminiscent of Shakespearean tragedy. According to the tale, a band of Crow warriors were camped along the lake one night. A young man named Little Moon asked his love, Stardust, to meet him along the lake shore once the other members of the party had fallen asleep. Little Moon was the first to reach the meeting place, and as he waited, he watched as a mist gathered over the water. Out of the fog, a beautiful maiden appeared, more beautiful and enchanting than anything Little Moon had ever laid his eyes upon. Stardust arrived at their rendezvous point as planned. She saw Little Moon and made her way toward him. By the time she reached him, though, he was under a spell and captivated by the maiden in the mist. Unaware that Little Moon's attention was with another, Stardust reached out to embrace her lover. However, he callously pushed her aside and turned towards the enchantress lingering in the mist. But she was gone. The seductive beauty had vanished as quickly as she appeared. Stardust was broken-hearted and humiliated by Little Moon's rejection. In fact, she was so distraught that she threw herself in the lake and drowned. The lifeless body of Stardust was found by members of the tribe the next morning. Her father demanded justice. Little Moon was seized and bound to a rock facing the lake. Fittingly, his fate would be to forever stare out at the lake. Bound and facing the water, he would have eternity to look for the maiden that had stolen his heart away from Stardust. Today, when the wind blows across the lake, it creates a moaning sound. This is said to be Little Moon's spirit wandering the lake, searching for his maiden. Though the tragic crow love story may be the most well-known legend, there are other native legends featuring Lake de Smet. The Sioux believed that waters of Lake de Smet possess strong healing powers. They also credited the waters with an ability to produce powerful visions. The Crow also have a frightening tale in which a monster emerges from the lake and snatches a papoose off the banks. According to the story, a beautiful young mother was cleaning recently killed rabbits in the water. Her sleeping baby was nearby in a papoose-type carrier. Suddenly, the young woman heard something on the shoreline. It was a terrifying creature coming out of the water and heading straight toward her child. The monster grabbed the infant in its jaws and returned to the water. The helpless woman could do nothing to save her child. The first person to document the monster in Lake de Smet was Edward Gillette. Gillette was employed as a surveyor for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad. Gillette chronicled his experiences working for the railroad in Wyoming in his book, Locating the Iron Trail. While Gillette was searching for a route for the railroad, he spoke with many ranchers and locals who told him about a fierce creature who stalked the waters and shores of Lake DeSmet. Smetty is said to be 30 to 40 feet in length. Local ranchers shared descriptions of what they had seen with Gillette. They said Smetty is similar in appearance to a large alligator or crocodile, with paddles for feet, a spiny backbone, and a slender body. A local rancher shared a chilling account with Gillette. The man witnessed a white-tailed deer being attacked by the monster. He was awe-stricken at the ease in which the fierce creature ripped apart the deer as it dragged it into the water. Perhaps attacks such as this is the reason that horses near the lake and local wildlife seem to be wary around the banks of Lake DeSmet. In another harrowing encounter on Lake DeSmet, a young ranch hand had a run-in with the legendary monster, which left him quite shaken. His former employer's daughter saw the young man hastily returning from the lake, his horse on a dead run. Her father ran out to meet him, but he was so shaken up that he could barely speak. After finally calming down, the young man described what he had seen: a 30 to 40 foot long serpentine creature about 18 inches in diameter with a bony ridge running down its back. The monster was brownish black in color and swam using snake-like motions, with its head held high above the water.